We have today with us designer Gunjan Gupta and Andrea Tomasi. Gunjan is a master's graduate from the Central St. Martin's College and is the founder of Studio Wrap, a successful product and interior design practice. With a trademark playful approach towards material and form, her recognizable works have been showcased internationally at leading design platforms like Design Miami, Sotheby's London, and collected by prestigious institutions like MAD Paris, M Plus Hong Kong, and Vitra Design Museum. A strong advocate of craft, her perspectives are communicated via collectible design objects, curatorial roles, and Ikes, which is a product design brand for 21st century living. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Gunjan. Andrea Tomasi has graduated in art, music, and performing arts disciplines at DAMS in Bologna and has worked for 20 years as a journalist and editor in several international newspapers. In 2018, on the occasion of the first edition of Homo Faber, a celebratory event dedicated to excellent craftsmanship that takes place every 2 years in Venice, he began his collaboration with the Michelangelo Foundation for creativity and craftsmanship. In addition to assisting the Michelangelo Foundation's director, Alberto Cavalli, in the general curatorial work of the event, he's also the editor-in-chief for the Homo Faber Guide, an online guide to more than 3,000 artisans in 46 countries around the world. And he's also the head of the Artisans Engagement Pool with the foundation. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Andrea.
Thank you.
And as you can see, the entire talk is also being interpreted in Indian Sign Language. Now I'll hand over to our esteemed speakers, and please take it from here.
Maybe I can start with a short presentation of the Michelangelo Foundation, correct?
Yes.
So I leave the stage just 1 second, but I'll be back. Don't worry. Just because I need to read the screen. So, first of all, it's an honor for us to be here. It's our first time in India. It's the first time that the Michelangelo Foundation, thank you. It's the first time that the Michelangelo Foundation presents itself in this country. Our goal until last year was mainly European-centric, but in the last months we decided to welcome new countries in our projects. So just a quick presentation. So Michelangelo Foundation for Creativity and Craftsmanship was founded by Mr. Johann Rupert and Mr. Franco Cologni in October 2016. Mr. Johann Rupert, on the right side of the photo, is a leading South African businessman and chairman of the Swiss-based luxury group Richemont International, so Cartier, Van Cleef & Arpels, Montblanc, and other brands. Franco Cologni is an Italian entrepreneur, author, and cultural authority, and former chairman of Cartier International. I'm waiting because someone wants to take a photo. Good. Our goal is, let's say, we try to create and craft a more human future. So we champion craftsmanship, endorse and enable artisans to sell their work and to sustain and grow their businesses in the long term. We are building a community of international artisans, from rising stars to master craftspeople. We try to inspire young generations to enter craft and to pursue it as a career path, and this is pivotal. And our aim is to make craftsmanship more relevant socially, culturally, and economically for our community. We do this through 3 main projects. They are all under the umbrella Homo Faber. Homo Faber is a Latin expression who means the man who does. So we have a guide, we have an event, a biennial event, and we have educational programs. The Homo Faber Guide is the first international craft community. It's an online platform where we present artisans from 47 countries in Europe and beyond. At the moment, the non-European countries present in the guide are South Korea, Singapore, Japan, Colombia, Uzbekistan, and Zimbabwe. We present in this guide more than 3,000 artisans, and you can see some numbers of what you can find in our online platform. This is a job that is possible thanks to the collaboration of more than 130 institutions all around the world that we work with, and also thanks to some city ambassadors, relevant people in the field of design and art, who share with us their recommendations and their names of artisans. The Homo Faber Guide is a useful tool and a travel companion where visitors can find artisans locally and at a travel destination, contact artisans to book an experience, buy an object, or commission a bespoke one, make contacts for an apprenticeship, and choose partners for a professional collaboration. Our biennial event, Homo Faber, is our flagship biennial exhibition in Venice and across the city. We celebrate craftspeople through themed exhibitions curated by international experts in craft and design. We made 2 editions in 2018 and 2022. The next one will be in September 2024. The island is the island of San Giorgio, so in front of San Marco Square. We basically rented the entire island and we create several exhibitions dedicated to craft. So the next one will be from the 1st to the 30th of September at Fondazione Giorgio Cini, and the art director will be the Italian filmmaker Luca Guadagnino, that maybe some of you knows for the film Call Me By Your Name. Doppia Firma is another project that we sustained and supported for 7 years. It's still a project that you will discover on the next Salone del Mobile. Is created by an Italian foundation, Fondazione Cologni dei Mestieri d'Arte. We supported them for 7 years, and is an annual exhibition that pairs top international designers with master artisans to produce a unique collection of objects, because design and craftsmanship are at the center of our actions. And then we will speak about this, my dear Gunjan. Next gen, just to finish, we invest in the future of crafts, of course. We try to make craft professions socially, culturally, and financially appealing and viable to the younger generation. We try to develop the employability of our artisans and the young community, and we try to equip them with effective tools to develop thriving workshops, ensuring they train the next generation. Basically, we have 2 projects with young people. The first one is Homo Faber Fellowship. Every year we give the possibility to 20 students. Next year they will be 30 students to spend 6 months in a workshop with a master to learn a craft. So we cover all the expenses, thanks also to our main sponsor, Gégé Lecoutre. And the other project is the Young Ambassadors project. So for the event, we find 100 young students from everywhere in the world, from the schools of art and craft, and they come to Venice and they are the guide of our event. So this is the Michelangelo Foundation. Our goal is work with craft. Here I represent the craft on this stage. You represent the design, Gunjan. And so I want to start with a question for you. How important is the association between craft and design? And can you tell us a little bit more about your journey in craft, and how craft has, let's say, shaped your way to be a designer today?
That was an incredible presentation, Andrea. I've been a fan of Homo Faber since 2018 when I saw the exhibition in Venice. So it's a real honor. And I'll start by talking a little bit about my journey, which I just realized is exactly 20 years ago. 2 decades ago, I went to St. Martin's in London to do my master's in design. And the master's was on, the thesis question was the lack of internationally relevant furniture from India. And I think what was really important at that time was the landscape of design and how craft as a visual language was making its way into design. That was the time when Tom Dixon's crown chair was around. It was the time that Mark Newson made the first prototype for the Lockheed Lounge in Japan, then eventually industrially produced it. So it was this post-industrial reaction to material and how things were made. And craft was just kind of peeping into the visual appeal of objects. Which really inspired me, and I started to think about how Indian craft could perhaps be a part of this, visual narrative. That was on the international side. The other thing that was really striking with what was happening while I was in London was countries were starting to sort of, zero in on the cultural identities. So whether it was Droog design, whether it was the made in Italy, whether it was made in Britain, it was all about this cultural identity, which really got me to think about India's cultural identity in relation to design. And these were the factors that made me think about craft in a very particular way. I admired the works of Lalanne and Garost and Bonetti as objects that were made by hand sculpted, which sort of informed the way I started to think. On the India side, craft has been pejorative. It's something that we see every day. But there was this paradox of export and import. India was importing like crazy, Italian design. All homes were sort of having this veneer of made in Italy. And India was exporting a lot of cheap and cheerful, sort of not very well made objects as a sourcing haven. That's what you saw on the international side. And it was very disturbing, given the fact that India was a sourcing base for some of the finest design companies in fashion, in homeware, in design. So it was this mixture of, seeing India in this context that really made me think about the idea of how this universe needed to come together and what was the potential. Sadly, 20 years ago, there was really no conversation between craft and design. A book that I discovered.
Let's say also that 20 years ago, craft was not really in fashion.
It wasn't.
Now it's in fashion, but 20 years ago, not really.
It wasn't. But it was, you cannot escape craft in India, and it's impossible to not incorporate craft. So, but how would craft be incorporated became a question that I really had to answer and think about. And the idea of the rarefied object, the idea of collectible design, which again was something that was growing at that time. There were probably 3 or 4 galleries in the world. Design Miami was newly minted in 2005. So again, that dialogue was very, very nascent and very new. I remember discovering the book written by Dr. Amin Jafar. He wrote a book on Indian furniture where he spoke about the advent of globalization and how Indian crafts married Western forms and resulted in these hybrid objects in the highest quality of craftsmanship. Very strongly patronized all over the world, highly coveted. So there was a tradition, there was a time. Sadly, post-independence, we lost that momentum, things changed, the power equations changed, and so on and so forth. So this was a little bit of my journey in craft. My first chair was made in pure gold leaf. In India, we still make gold leaf by beating pellets of pure gold. Have you seen that?
Yes, I was in Jaipur 2 days ago, and at a certain moment with the taxi, we enter in a small street, and I start listening. Tum, 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 tum.
Fascinating.
It's super fascinating. We still have also in Italy, in Venice and in Florence, we still have some bitters, but it's a craft that is disappearing in Italy,
In
unfortunately.
India, there are a handful of families. But when you see that gold leaf that comes out of that hand-beaten process, it's thick, the luster is absolutely unique. And the application comes up without joints. So it's a very special technique, and they actually have a secret recipe of applying it.
But I'm thinking that you have a treasure that you have to protect, in the sense that you still have some crafts that unfortunately in our countries in Europe are disappeared. We are talking about the gold leaf. For example, I just said in Italy we still have but very few, and they are quite old. And so this is a traditional craft, traditionally also in Italy, but that is disappearing. And thanks to you and to your country, this craft remains, is still alive. So you have to keep it alive and find a way.
We absolutely have to keep it alive. And I think the whole idea of updating tradition, the idea of taking crafts outside of their traditional context is a huge area of conversation, and something that, again, has been very much part of the journey and the approach that sort of resulted with this background that I just gave you. I realized that if there are only a handful of families that are practicing a certain craft, and if the next generation of those craftsmen are not interested in pursuing this craft, what then happens?
Yeah.
And then this idea of time in India, you know, we have such a philosophical engagement with time. There's no past, there's no future. It's this non-present and present. And what is this present saying in the context of craft? Because everything to do with craft is about time. So one of the things that I discovered was really integral, and I would love to hear what you think about it, is that respect for craftsmen is one of the most, it's like a little psychological reframing of your engagement when you're working with craftsmen. When I worked with these gold leaf makers, gilders, and the silver wrappers, I mean, there were 3-4 of them. Majority of them were doing very sort of degenerative style, you know, sort of work for the export market and things. I felt that they really lacked the respect that they wanted. So it is giving them visibility, it's talking about them, it's giving their story a face. I think that's a role of design which has a lot of power.
Absolutely. You know, master craftsmen are keeping strong values that are extremely important in the world of today. And hopefully things are changing, because craft is becoming more and more à la mode, let's say, on trend, in a negative and in a positive way. In a negative way because we are assisting to something that I call the craft washing. It's like the greenwashing for many companies. Many companies now, they say, we work with artisans, our objects are handmade, etc., etc. Then it's a little bit ridiculous, because maybe the handmade part, it represents only the 5% of the object they produce, or they try to make up an industrial production, saying that an object is handmade, but it's not really true. And also, in many cases, it's not clear how they produce, in which conditions they produce these objects. If they produce the objects in an ethical way, yes, no, we don't know. So we are assisting a little bit to this craft washing. Hello. Thank you very much. So we are assisting a little bit to this aspect that is not positive at all. But we are also seeing how the young generation is interested by craft, and especially after the COVID-19, I have to say, because I think the COVID-19 has changed many things in our society. And we see this directly with the foundation, the interest that young people have for craft, because many students, let's say the young generation is different from the young generation of 10 years ago. Many of them, they don't want to spend the entire life in an office making business, just making money, and that's it. For my generation, it was extremely important to go to the university and be someone. Be a lawyer, be a businessman, If I
It's the same in India.
But let's say that 20 years ago, go to your parents and say, I want to be a craftsman. It was, oh my God, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Now things are changing because the young generation wants to express their creativity. And so we really see a new wave of artisans, and this is extremely, extremely important.
It's very exciting.
And we have an opportunity now. We have an opportunity. The fact that craft is on the trend, the fact that craft is in the fashion. Let's try to promote this new generation of craftsmen. From the beginning, our goal was work with the young generation because this is the key for the future. And I would like to ask you how we can, let's say, update traditions to reach a wider audience globally, but also to reach the younger audience.
So I think, hello? So I think the importance of updating crafts is critical, and the role of design is integral. Your recent visits to Jaipur, we were talking about it, that even if it is an enterprise that is working with craft, it is the vision of the enterprise and the role that they play in helping craft become a sort of global player is critical in India at the moment. I think one of the ways, I think a role of design can be very powerful. I really enjoyed looking at this project, State of the World by Matthew Lehanier in Paris. If you remember, it was showcased in Basel at Design Miami, where it was the state of the world expressed through 150 countries. And the universality of the design language, of craft and design, that sort of gave you this landscape of 150 objects with minor differences, which really made me, the premise of the project was that craft does not have to be so focused on ethnicity. It can be a universal language. Historically, that's exactly what the role of craft was, prior to boundaries, prior to, you know, each and every country or community claiming a certain identity. I think those are old stories. Those stories need to be told in a new way. So the power of storytelling, which can be reframed for the current world, is extremely important. Designers can play a role as curatorial thinkers, as, of course, storytellers. I think another thing that is, that design and craft in context to the role is the power of a cultural crossover. And I think the example of the Japanese woven basket to me is just timeless, and it's amazing. It stands on its own as a work of art. It's in almost every home across the world, interpreted, you know, in various different ways. So it's how does design play a role in craft in order for it to become something relevant across the world? That's the intention.
And also attract a new audience, absolutely.
New audience, it empowers the craftsman. Another highlight of my career was curating India's presence at Revelations. It's a 21st century craft biennale held in Paris. The year that we showcased India was at the Grand Palais, a fantastically majestic setting. Due to budget constraints, I was not really able to sort of commission new works, get in conversation with craftsmen, and had to go into ateliers and look for craft or look for ideas where, you know, the sort of hand and mind was in play. And I was amazed at what I saw. I really felt that there was a zeitgeist the craftsmen were a part of. There was an interpretation of scale that each one of them, just coincidentally, from stone to terracotta to, one of the potters, a very well-known potter who's a 15th generation craftsman, was playing with miniature pots. He had invented a tiny little tool so we're talking about updating tradition, and that is a very, self-motivated vision, very entrepreneurial. These miniature pots are exquisite. They are at the booth, GO1, so please come and have a look. And while another potter, Girirajji, was playing with scale. So he had worked with a kiln to come up with a large pot as large as 7 feet tall. So there was this idea of scale. Another craftsman in stone was working with making a large-scale conch shell in stone. There was another one working with the wrist ornament, the kangan, in terracotta. So I just was amazed at how this idea of scale, which is a concept that we've used in design very often, was emerging in the way they were interpreting their own landscape. And we presented these objects under a title named Vernacular Wonderland that played with scale across material and craft, much to the amazement of a lot of people who hadn't viewed Indian craft beyond what they see in museums. So the identity of Indian craft has also been trapped in, historical representations of motifs and
Yes,
form.
of course. And try to find the right balance between tradition and innovation is not really easy. I have to say that, we, as I said, we started with Europe, and let's say that in Europe, the idea of craftsmanship is almost the same in all the countries. Let's say that when you move from the western part of Europe to the eastern part, you start seeing some differences because in Russia, in Bulgaria, in Romania, traditional crafts are still really, really important. But then when we started exploring the world, we faced to many countries where the craft is still extremely traditional, extremely linked to, let's say, for example, pottery. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the pottery. I think, for example, Colombia. Colombia was the first non-European country we studied. I don't know why we decided Colombia. And we immediately found a different concept of craft, still linked to the old traditions. And of course, we have to bring them a new point of view in order to be sustainable and to be appealing also for the future. We are trying to create a common language because, at the moment, there are different associations working with craft, but they are local, mainly local. So in France, you have plenty of organizations working for the promotion of French craftsmanship, and they are probably the best one in class, yes. Because France is absolutely an example in this sense, an example to follow, because the French state strongly believes in the power of métier d'art, in the power of craft. They do a lot of actions to promote and preserve. Unfortunately, it's not the case of Italy. That is probably the country with the biggest story in arts and craft, but unfortunately, our government is not working on the right direction to promote crafts. France is an example, absolutely. But I was saying that there are plenty of organizations working locally. What we try to do is really try to put together all these players and say, let's try to create a common language. So, for example, we fixed 11 criteria of excellence. And we are asking to all the associations we work with to adapt these criteria to the context, of course, because it's important to study the context of each country. But please use our tools and try to define what is excellence in your country.
I think it's very important to sort of, articulate what exactly, these ideas mean in sort of bullet points or in real ways. So what do you think is the role of digitization in that? And I, of course, know that Homo Faber has done excellent work. So do tell us.
My God. The digital is still a problem. It's still a problem. We have a digital project that is the Homo Faber Guide. I am the editor-in-chief of the guide. So it's really a digital platform where you can find artisans around you in 47 countries. And to create this large database of artisans, of course, we start sourcing them in the different countries. And I was shocked to see how many of them, they don't have any basics on digital. Let's say they don't have a website, they don't have an Instagram profile, they don't have Facebook, maybe Facebook. And so it's one of the job that we try to do is explain them how important is in the world of today to proper communicate what you do. Is what you have said, storytelling is central, and we have to explain them why is pivotal, not because we need Instagram because we have to. No, we need to communicate. You need to communicate, we say to the artisans, your story, because it's the difference between an object handmade and an object made in an industrial way. Is the story that is hidden behind the object that you have created. It's your story. And this is why when we imagined and created the Homo Faber Guide, we decided to present all the artisans with an interview, because we decided to give them the voice and to give them the possibility to tell the story, tell us your story. Because I repeat, craftsmanship is basically a human story, a human journey.
Absolutely, absolutely. Similarly, when post presentation at Revelations, which impacted me very powerfully with the way the audience had responded to Indian mastercraft, the sort of unadulterated Indian mastercraft. It really made me think of the craftsman as, as an equal, as a thinker himself, and the sort of idea of the craftsman as designer. And that's how IKIS was born, IKIS Limited, where we offer 21 editions of these objects, which are co-created between myself as creative director and the craftsman. And digitally on our website, we have a similar approach of interviewing the craftsman, telling the historical aspect, connotation of the craft, and what the craftsman is doing currently. Of course, those editions are numbered, signed, and they're available through our website. But we also encourage people to go on our website and connect with the craftsmen directly and, co-create, acquire, produce, so on and so forth. This is not something that is the norm. Usually, it's the designer that's, getting the credit for the entire piece, and a large part of what design relies on is craft. I really don't think designers can take credit for supporting craft. I feel craft is the one supporting designers. We can't do much without them.
You said one interesting thing. Between our criteria, there is the criteria of interpretation. That is, to me, probably the most important, in the sense that the difference between artisans is to bring in the object your point of view, your creativity. And this is the difference between a master artisan and a maker. A maker is someone who receive a project. Okay, I have to do this, I do this. Done. Basta. The object is beautiful, but I just copied a project. A master interpretate. For example, in the dialogue with the designer, uh, you have to know that when we work on doppia firma, so we created this couple, one designer and one artisan, and we say you have to create one object that will be exposed at the Salone del Mobile. They usually have long discussions because, of course, a designer has a project, but then the master starts interpreting the project. And so there are many, many discussions on how, let's say, create the project and arrive at the final object. But this is the essence. I mean, if you ask a master artisan to give life to
Produce
your
your work,
to give life to your project, you have to expect that your project could be a little bit transformed by his point of view.
Absolutely.
And this is the difference between a master artisan and just a maker.
Absolutely. And that's really, those serendipitous conversations that I've been very fortunate to have with master craftsmen in India have really formed the essence of my work. I always have this little play on words, where I'm using Indian words in association with their larger context, like the Ganga Jamuna, for example, is the meeting of the two rivers. It's also an aesthetic in Indian design, Indian crafts of gold and silver. It's the combination of the two. And this emerged out of a conversation when I was working with the gilders and the silver wrapping craftsmen. And they started to say, Madam, in Hindi, Madam, ye to Ganga Jamuna jaisa hai. And we got into a long conversation about the meeting of these two mighty rivers and how these two materials can be interpreted. And that's where the whole conversation about reflection of the gold into the silver, the research that I started to eventually do. So I've always felt that it has been a co-creation in that sense. Yeah. It's without that dialogue, without that conversation, without that deep understanding of Indian culture and roots, which unfortunately our generation does not, including me. I mean, I'm digging into books, archives, having conversations, but largely, a lot of my work has been informed by these dialogues. Another one which stands out is I was working with this stone craftsman, and I said to him, we both started chatting. I said, what should we make? What do you think we should do? And so we said, let's animate stone. I said, chalo, stone ko kaise karte hain jisme usme kuch jaan, let's give it life. And then he started to talk about the Bikaner temple, for whatever reason, the mice temple, and the animation of a bowl. We started talking, the idea was to make a bowl. So we said, animate a bowl. How do you animate a bowl? And then the idea of the mice drinking off that bowl became this conversation. And then he says, I was thinking, let's do this. Let's have these mice that go on and off. I said, well, mice can be icky. Then we went into Ratatouille, the cartoon he had seen with his son. And it was just such a heartwarming, conversation. And there he was, fully invested into the co-creation, the ideation, the concept of the object. We have the object on display at the booth.
Exactly.
And it is a crazy object, but one that has gotten serious eyeballs. I mean, it's been acquired by Galliano. It's in his collection. It's that sort of a collector who's looking at that object and saying, this is amazing. It's handcrafted mice. They're doing something, on this bowl. So it really can take you somewhere else.
Exactly. So if you go in her place, you will see the result on how fruitful could be the conversation between a designer and a craftsman. Absolutely. But in your opinion, what are the challenges for Indian craftsmanship in the near future?
Well, I think organization at their end is one of the biggest challenges. Consistency is something that we face a lot. So design companies organize themselves in a way to organize the craft craftsmen. On an individual level, I think they're very much invested into their lives. It's not easy. So through the partnerships that we do, we empower, we sort of come up, I mean, over the years, we've come up with a manual of how we work with craftsmen. So it's a very simple process. And I've, in conversation with craftsmen, something that's emerged is they've been using this process in other craft collaborations that they're doing or in their work. So that's one challenge, being organized. The second challenge is I really genuinely believe craftsmen can elevate themselves through the integration of concept into their work. So it's a little bit of lack of confidence. And I think more and more projects that we see, in the same realm of co-creation, we should see craftsmen becoming more and more confident to express themselves on their own. I think they're fully ready. India is, we don't have the problem of digitization in that way. We are so digitally advanced. Everybody's on Instagram, the internet. Craftsmen are constantly WhatsApping back and forth. So it's really quite advanced. I do feel it's just a matter of a platform, giving them the opportunity to express themselves, encouraging them to do that.
And what about transmission? Because transmission in Europe is one of the biggest problems. The fact that due to the crisis, due to the fact that craft was no longer on the trend, they closed many schools. For example, in Italy, at a certain moment, at the end of the 90s, beginning of the new century, they decided to close different schools of craft. And the same in other countries. And we have this problem of transmission. The fact that some young, talented artisans told me I had to learn the craft on the books. I have to invent myself my craft because I didn't find a master alive to teach me the craft. So, and neither a school to form me properly. What about the transmission in India? There are schools there, or the transmission is always master pupil at the workshop?
Yes, there are not really any schools as such. So that's what I was referring to, organization. I kind of meant this as well. It's transmitted, generationally from father to son and so on and so forth. It's a very big challenge in our country as well, because the next generation would rather be, would like to be connected to the urban story of India, would rather work in a call center, would be a rickshaw puller in the city, but would want to be part of, Bollywood plays a role, you want to be part of the energy. Being in the rural context is not exactly fun. So here comes the challenge of how do you make craft aspirational? And I think we are having a moment there, so it's very positive, It is a fashion, it is a buzzword, and I do feel that it is influencing craftsmen to take what they do quite seriously. We hope that there is change, but at the moment, it is in a moment of crisis, I would say. Transmission is a challenge. India is going through a rapid modernization, values are shifting, societies are changing. So as a result, it's a very serious problem.
I hope you will learn from the errors we made in Europe when, due to this acceleration and this transformation, we left behind us so many talented craftsmen and craft, and so now we are trying to be back.
Yes, that's true. In India, we also have another problem of, our crafts being produced by neighboring countries, namely China. We have a big problem. So they're machine-made and they're sold back into our country. So we have that other problem as well of continuity of, the market and what the market is willing to pay for craft. Yeah. So it's a serious concern.
But there is a market for craft, definitely.
Collectible craft has a huge market. And I think all we're missing is the right platform. I think if we just give craft the right platform to stand on its own without a brand associated with it or a designer associated with it. It really has an opportunity to flourish.
I think sell craft online, it's difficult in the sense that you have to see the object, you have to touch the object, you have to understand the story behind the object. In the events, in the physical events, it works very well. So I know that the Revelation that you mentioned with the English accent, so I think the French would not happy to to listen revelations instead of Revelation.
Revelation. Absolutely, absolutely.
But the Revelation works very well in terms of selling. Homo Faber is not a fair. We don't sell objects, but last year, in 2022, we created a system to, let's say, connect potential clients to the artisans exhibited, and it worked very well. So there is a strong interest in craft. Selling through platforms, I think we still need time to find the right way to sell craft, because there are some examples that have worked not really well. I'm thinking also at a certain moment also Amazon created a sort of platform where selling crafts, but I think after just 1 year they closed this section.
I really think the sort of curatorial approach of Homo Faber is amazing, because that's really when you're reaching out to a craftsman. You have, like, for example, the journey of life, and you have the many journeys.
You are spoiling the theme of the next edition.
I'm not supposed to talk about it. Well, the idea of a curatorial vision is something that needs to be bounced directly with the craftsman. Let's give them a chance. Let's give them an opportunity to respond to it. They rarely get these opportunities. So it's really, when I meant a platform, I think this is really what it is. It's give them a platform. Let's see how they, interpret it themselves.
So since you have anticipated, I can say that the next edition of Homo Faber will be in September 2024 in Venice. And the theme is the journey of life. So we will try to represent 10 moments if a human life. It doesn't matter if you are a woman, a man, no gender, if you live in India, Italy, Japan, but 10 moments in a human life, and try to describe how craft is present in these 10 moments. We will present approximately 400 different artisans, and with, let's say, 500 objects. And so if you love craft, please come to Venice, because I think it's a good opportunity. And I also hope to welcome you in Venice, and also other talented Indian artisans to present and to submit their proposals for the event, because it is the first time that we present India in Homo Faber. And so
super exciting. So I think we pretty much at the end of our time.
We are on time. Perfect.
But I have one last question that I'd like to ask. What is your approach when you decide to include a new country in your scope?
But let's say that we start studying. So we make a research on to define let's say the most relevant form of craft for each country, and then we start mapping all the organizations on the territory, and then we start contacting them. As I said, we have created a network of 150 approximately associations worldwide, because our offices are in Geneva. So we can't manage and develop, let's say, a country with no local partners. We need local partners. So we created this map of associations. Then we start contacting them. We present ourselves, and then we choose Could be one, could be two, could be three different associations, and we start working together on the definition of what we are looking for. As I said, we are looking for master craftsmen, could be also a rising star, but with the point of view that I just described. So not only makers, but people able to express their creativity through craft.
I have another question. You have, sorry, I meant it was my last, but this is really the last. You have the most amazing craft photography on your, on the website.
See,
How does that happen?
No, it's
Do you do it?
no, but it's my nightmare.
It is a nightmare,
Yes,
right? Yes.
it's a nightmare.
Because I think 90% of the story is being told through the photographs.
Exactly. So just 2 seconds. I am a journalist and I worked in newspapers for a long time. I'm obsessed with photos because if you have photos not really good, also the website looks not good. So I'm obsessed with photos and I personally check all the photos that are published. So I think in the last 4 years, I have seen, I don't know, millions of photos. Craftsmen, they hate me because if they provide not good photos, they can't participate to our platform. It's also a way, again, to tell them you need a proper material to communicate yourself. Because if you do a wonderful battle, but then your photos are horrible, I mean,
I know.
it's lost.
It's a challenge.
It's lost. So you have to prepare the most wonderful bottle, but then you have also to photograph the bottle properly in order to celebrate yourself. Not to give me a nice photo, but to celebrate what you do. And it's again, sometimes is also a question of self-confidence.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think it's a start. So what you're doing is amazing because it's becoming a reference point.
We try to be a reference point.
You are.
Thank you. It's not my role to say this, but
No, it absolutely. We're very much looking forward to the next edition
Yes.
and excited.
thank you.
Thank you so much.